Antipsychotic effect on dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. Antipsychotic medications often work by holding back dopamine. Remember, too much dopamine can result in mania. Blocking dopamine with an antipsychotic is an all too effective way to bring someone out of mania and psychosis. But it also limits the person's ability to access the normal perception of reward. This is what an antipsychotic looks like at the synapse. Dopamine is normally released from the vesicles into the synapse and affects the receptors so as to produce stimulation. In the presence of an antipsychotic, less dopamine is able to reach the receptors, and so therefore very little stimulation is happening, and so the perception of reward is muted. And now we get to a concept very like downregulation, as we saw with stimulants. But in this case, what happens is upregulation. The tendency for the nervous system to up or downregulate is collectively called neuroplasticity. In the case of antipsychotics, what tends to happen is that the dopamine receptors upregulate. So in effect, the synapse builds more dopamine receptors. In this way, the little bit of dopamine that gets through has a higher chance of exciting something. And so in this way, the drugs tend to become less effective, and the person needs more and more of the drug to combat the original symptoms. With this upregulation happening in the synapse, getting off of an antipsychotic can be very difficult and needs to be handled with extra caution. Even if the person was misdiagnosed, they can still have a challenging time getting off of these drugs. This is why. What do you think will happen when you start reducing the drug? When you start getting a more normal amount of dopamine hitting an excessive number of dopamine receptors? Right, you will often get a rather sudden escalation of mania or psychosis. Oftentimes, when this happens, conventionally we think, well, of course. Look at what happens when they come off the drug. They need this drug. And the person becomes their diagnosis forever. Most likely what is happening is that the nervous system just needs time to re-regulate itself, and that if the person goes slow enough, they can adapt. A person coming off of antipsychotics too fast often reports a lack of sleep, failure to eat, and act tangentially. This can be tough because once a person gets into these states, they may be resistant to slowing things down and you may lose them. This is largely what makes this the most difficult drug class to withdraw from. To address antipsychotic medication withdrawal issues, supplement with niacin 1,000 to 5,000 milligrams daily. Always include approximately twice as much vitamin C as niacin. Use BH4 and phosphatidylserine to convert the dopamine. Toxic impairment. Stop smoking if possible, but at least limit it. Sudden onset of chain smoking is not a good sign and can mean the person is starting to spin out. Do not smoke pot or do any recreational drugs, especially stimulants or hallucinogens, at this time. Eliminate sugar and caffeine. Seriously, even a cup of coffee during the withdrawal can land a person in the hospital. What was tolerated before on meds, as far as stimulants, almost certainly cannot be tolerated during the withdrawal. Understand this well. What habits a person may have had on antipsychotics are not going to serve them while coming off. Eat protein-based foods and eat 3 times per day. The proteins help ground a person and control blood sugar swings at this time. Vegans and vegetarians may have a bit of a rough go at this. If vegan, include as heavy of vegan proteins as you can and limit light foods like fruits. Environment. Increase physical activity, specifically cardiovascular. Gym membership, regular yoga classes. They are going to need to redirect all of that energy. If a person is still lethargic from the drugs, start with walking and then move up to something more demanding. Do anything to extrovert the attention out into the world. Hikes, manual labor. It is best to limit reading, especially religious material, just during this time. The concepts of God and religion during an antipsychotic withdrawal can fuel psychosis. Even limiting meditation practices during this time is advised. The idea is to get out of the head and externalize as much into the environment as possible, including getting off of the phone and off of the computer. Additionally, allow 1 month of withdrawal for every 1 year on an antipsychotic medication if psychosis was a feature. This general rule is specific to long-term users of antipsychotics that have psychosis as a feature. If this is the case, the suggestion is to withdraw as much as is practical during the stay at ATMC and to get to the lowest possible dose. Then continue at that lowest possible dose for a period of time at home, from 3 months to a year, to make sure life's feelings are getting integrated. Consider Depakote as a buffer. Depakote can help soften the withdrawal. Depakote can be used throughout the duration of the antipsychotic withdrawal. Once the antipsychotic withdrawal is over, the Depakote withdrawal is almost certainly much easier comparatively. If an antipsychotic was introduced to help with sleep or for a reason other than psychosis and is at a low dose, then a person can generally come off faster without the use of Depakote.